what would that look like for us to make sure we keep ourselves as a married couple a priority when we have kids? And how do we make that happen and not let the expectations be too much and the stressors be too much?
Hello and welcome to the Sittin in a Tree podcast, where we're helping you build a fun and fulfilling marriage, sharing our stories, and giving out advice to move your marriage forward. Now, here's today's show. Hey guys, I'm John.
I'm Shalon.
And this is Sittin in a Tree podcast, the podcast where we try to help you have a fun and fulfilling marriage. Today's topic is the baby carriage. First comes love, then comes marriage, and now we're to the baby carriage. And this will get us through all of our introductory shows or where we're going to go on our podcast. Today we're going to be talking about family, about managing families and what that takes to manage a family. And it's a hard thing to manage a family. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think the two hardest things you do is get married and manage a marriage, just figuring that out, navigating it. And then having kids and being parents. I think those are the two hardest things you'll ever do in your life. It's a process and a journey, and it changes because once you think you've figured out this baby and how to be parents to a baby, then they become toddlers, and then you have to figure it all out again. So it's always changing and evolving. And once you think, oh, I've got this, you really don't.
Mm-hmm. And we've been through most of the phases at this point too. We had a baby who grew into a toddler, and then all of the adolescence and teenage and college age, and then married, and now grandkids. And it doesn't really ever end. There's always a family that you are still taking care of. Your role may change in that, but there's always something to be done. So for those that are just now entering marriage or are early on in their marriage, it'd be good to look into some of this stuff and figure out, how am I going to do this long term? For myself, I felt like I was by the seat of my pants, just flowing through it and figured it out as I go, which is kind of my way. That's how I do everything. So
Your
it
MO.
wasn't a weird deal for me to be doing it that way. But there are things that I wish I had known, and I wish I would have maybe not even known, but known to consider that were going to come up, and that I would have to take care of or manage in some way, shape, or form.
And I think that it's really easy to have this idea that you have marriage, you have the children, and it just happens naturally, and it doesn't. It's a learning process. They don't come with instruction books or guides, and you're kind of left with this little human that you're responsible for. And they're all different too, by the way. There's no even consistency with that. You have to figure it out. And a lot of times what will happen in marriages are you're left thinking it's your responsibility to figure it out, and maybe not so much communicating about that it's a team effort and that we have to figure it out together. This is us working together to raise this child instead of like you do this and I do this. It's us together. What do we want for this child's life?
From our standpoint in this podcast, really, we're focusing on marriages, but the focus of what we're talking about here is not necessarily whether or not you're raising your children right. What we're really looking into is how to keep your marriage fun and fulfilling in all of that stuff. Because when it comes down to it, having a family, starting a family or managing a family is a giant stressor for a marriage.
Mhm.
It's probably one of the bigger problems that we face in marriage to begin with.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge season of change. And you do spend those 9 months preparing and planning, but it's not what you think it's ever going to be. Even if it's your first child, if it's your fifth child, it doesn't matter. It's not what you think it's going to be. It's easy to forget to really communicate with each other about what are you thinking? What are you needing? Where are you coming from in this situation? And it's not what social media thinks and society thinks or what you even expect.
Right.
And so it gets lost in that.
Let's just go back a little bit. We like to share from our own experiences a lot of times. So we had one daughter. That was all we could handle. We could not, and people have their jokes about only having one child and things like that, and that may be true. I don't know about all of that, but I know the one that we had was plenty for us, and we learned a lot. But going into it, what were some of the fears or worries or concerns that you had going into being a parent and how that related to the marriage and running a family?
I think, first of all, For someone with anxiety, I definitely had a lot of worries and fears that would have played out, but I also had a lot of expectations for myself. Getting married young and those kind of things with that kind of fit the fairy tale. I mean, I wanted to be a wife and a mom. That was what I wanted to do. And so part of that was that we were going to have this baby and everything was going to be this picture perfect experience. And I mean, I think it started for me from the very beginning. Like we'd always said, two or four, even number of kids. So there was not going to just be one.
Mhm.
Pregnancy was not easy for me.
Right.
Labor and delivery was not easy for me. And then there's this idea that every woman is just this amazing mom, and you don't talk about it if you're not. And if you don't immediately feel like this is the best thing in the world. And so I was already struggling with all of those things internally and definitely was not talking about it because what's wrong with me? I'm not going to talk to you about it or to anybody because something was wrong with me.
Mhm.
And so I think that there was that underlying stressor already going on that maybe you were aware of. I'm going to say I'm sure you weren't aware of, but I don't know. And so that was happening. And then
Mhm.
I had this baby that I came home with. I mean, you were there too, of course, but I mean, like, now what? Because there was this, it was going to be perfect. We got home. There was no groceries in the house because we'd been at the hospital. There was no one there to celebrate with us. And then she made this little choking sound and oh my gosh, now what, kind
Mhm.
of thing. And so it wasn't this fairy tale and I wasn't this natural mom that knew everything. And then she didn't sleep for more than 45 minutes at a time for the first 12 weeks. And so then you think, I mean, at least for me, what I was thinking was, well, I'm a horrible mom. Like I don't know what to do with this beautiful little creature. And so, wow, I'm really bad at this, but I don't want to tell you that because what are you going to think of me? You're going to be like, okay, this isn't the woman I married. Like, what's wrong with her? And so there was all these expectations that I had put on myself. And then, you want the perfect pictures and the perfect outfit and all of these things that you see everybody else having. And if that's not working either, then the whole world is falling apart in my mind, kind of thing. And babies don't work that way.
We talked about fairy tales and stuff a little bit in the last episode, but we really don't take into account when we have all of these dreams and all of those things, reality of our own limitations and our own personalities. I mean, your anxiety didn't play into your your dream situation of how it was going to happen. And so even though things were okay, your anxiety and worrying about things really made it seem worse than what it actually was in those moments. And what happens is when there's no communication of that, then it becomes hard to be there for each other as a husband and wife because as far as I knew, you were fine. And I had never been around somebody with a new baby. I'd never been around a new mom. I didn't know what was normal and what wasn't normal. And I couldn't tell really what you were feeling, what you weren't. And I had my own things I was dealing with. My issues were more so of probably a responsibility thing now that this had happened. When it's just me and you, while I have a responsibility to take care of you in certain ways, when it all comes down to it, you can take care of yourself pretty much. So there's not as much responsibility there. When you bring a baby into it, then all of a sudden now there's a responsibility there that I'm responsible for this child and I have to be sure that she is fed and I have to be sure that she has everything that she needs. And yeah, I don't want to be the dad that can't provide what she needs. And so there's this stressor of now not just being a great dad, which is what I wanted to be. I also have the stressor of part of being that great dad is to provide. So how do I deal with the pressures of being a provider yet being present? Because for me to provide, then I'm not going to be present a lot of times. And so there's this constant struggle going back and forth of when I feel like I'm hitting one out of the park, I'm striking out on the other. And it's hard to get both of those going at the same time. And I don't think that those were necessarily real expectations on me, but they were expectations that I put on myself. And so when you do that, it makes you lose sight of what you're actually doing, which is trying to manage a family and keep a marriage together in all of that. And so a lot of our time gets put towards what is stressing us the most. And when we put all of our time towards what is stressing us the most, then we start losing what was good in the first place.
Right. And that's when you start missing the moments.
Right.
We get so worried about the moments or the bigger things, the
Hmm.
stressors, the expectations that we miss the moments. You can pick a holiday, you can pick a regular day, you can pick anything and that you're so caught up in all the stress and the other things that are happening that you miss the moments that are happening. It's important to talk about that with each other. And I'll be honest, I know I didn't talk about that with you, and so
Mhm.
I'm gonna say we didn't talk about that. I don't know.
That
Um,
was pre our, learning how to communicate with each other well.
and so we didn't know what we were both feeling in that
Mhm,
moment and how we were dealing with things, but we were also not realizing that we were so busy trying to deal with our own stressors that we were missing moments both with our child but then with each other because
mhm,
we weren't communicating about it because we weren't taking that time to say, "Hey, this is what I need from you,"
mhm,
or "This is what I'm struggling with." For me, I was focused on making sure I had this expectation of myself to be this great wife and mother, and with that part of that was really that, she looked a certain way and that we all looked a certain way and that we were a happy, healthy family.
mhm,
And so making sure those things happen. But then we were missing out on the fun moments where, bath time was funny or, getting dressed when she, did something cute wasn't necessary. I mean, like, oh, that was cute. But then we just rushed on beyond that
right.
because we had things we had to do. It had to be a certain way. There was an expectation or there was a stressor. And so it was so important to get those other things done that we missed those moments, both again with her and then with each other because we had to do something extra or make something done a certain way. And so I think it's important that we do that. And I think we do miss that often in general, but especially if we're not communicating about it.
A lot of times we don't want to add anything else to the other one,
Hmm.
and so I'm not going to tell you what I'm struggling with because I can see you're struggling. I may not know what it's with, but
Hmm.
I'm not adding one more thing about how I feel about all of this. When in reality, if we would both have done that, it goes back to we're not two, we're one. Neither one of us were whole because we were trying to deal each as a half
Hmm.
instead of dealing as a whole. And so the whole thing couldn't be good because each half was struggling.
Hmm.
Where if we would have came together and talked about each of those struggles, we could have worked it out. There were ways you could have supported me in that, and there were ways that I could have supported you in that. And then as a whole, we're working together. And that's hard to see in the moment,
Hmm.
very hard to see. I'm not saying that's easy.
Right.
That's not what we did.
Hmm.
That's not how we handled it then. But part of learning is learning how to look back over and see what you would have done differently. And part of learning is learning from other people's experiences. And what we were experiencing is in no means unique to our situation.
Right.
But if we can look at that and learn if somebody else is just now entering into that or thinking about entering into that, something that they can keep in mind is that you have to remember you are first married. You were
Hmm.
first husband and wife before you were mom and dad. You are
Hmm.
husband and wife.
Hmm.
And if you will take care of that husband wife relationship, then you're both going to be a better mom and dad.
Hmm.
You're both going to be able to fulfill that role better when you are working as one instead of working as halves of a whole.
Right. And I think some of that is communicating ahead of time. Now, it's great to have plans. It doesn't always work that way. If we had thought ahead and made a plan, I know our daughter would have said, "Watch what I can do to mess up those plans." But I do think it would be important to talk about those kind of things in part of the preparation the 9 months before and really said, like, what would that look like for us to make sure we keep ourselves as a married couple a priority when we have kids? And how do we make that happen and not let the expectations be too much and
Right.
the stressors be too much? Again, some of that's going to be speaking figuratively because you don't know until you know. I
Well, it's
mean,
not so much a plan. It's more of a direction. Our favorite vacations that we've went on have been our unplanned ones. We knew we were going on vacation.
right,
We knew we were going to go do something. We knew which direction we were going to head, but we
right.
didn't actually know which stops we were going to take or necessarily too far ahead of time where we were going to stop and stay
Hmm.
and those type of things. And those are fun for us. It became fun for you.
I was just going
It
to
started
say,
out fun for me. It became fun for you. You cannot plan out having a child or
right.
children to the extent that most people really want to plan that.
Hmm.
They are going to be different than you expect. They're going to act differently than you expect.
Hmm.
You're going to act differently than you expect. There are all sorts of things, there are all sorts of unknowns that are going to happen, but you can have a general direction that
Hmm.
you're going and you just know that with each situation that pops up, hey, this is the direction that we're going. I know that I am going to keep our marriage first
Hmm.
in this, that we are going to first and foremost be a team and that we are husband and wife. And when we disagree, which we will, we're going to come together, we're going to fix that, and we are going to be one in our marriage so that we can be one as mom and dad.
part of that is really saying not the plan, but the goal with this is really to lean into each other and not lean away or lean on our own to do something, to really be honest. And let's create a check in, at
Right.
night, or let's make sure we're talking to each other and that we are leaning into each other when we feel like we're struggling instead of saying, I've got this, I can do it, pull myself up by the bootstraps, I
Right.
can get this done. I'm going to lean into you and say, "Hey, you are my soft space. You are my person."
Mhm.
And so right now I'm struggling with this and I need to let you know that. And so the more we talk about that ahead of time, before there is a child, before
Mhm.
there is a life stressor, we are practicing that being one,
Mhm.
and being a team. That makes it easier. And so hopefully you're doing that ahead of time and then thinking about what that could look like when you're talking about children, when you are pregnant and planning on that and those kind of things. But I think making that intentional is a huge part of that process.
I think it's important too that you realize that it's not too late
Mhm.
to do that, because I mean we've been talking about babies and
Mhm.
setting out, and there may be, you may be watching this or listening to this, and I've got teenagers. It's too late for me to go that route, or I've got grandkids. It's too late for me to go that route. Well, it's not, because you can begin right now in this moment to put your marriage first and come together as one and figure out, okay, now we're managing teenagers. We're parents of teenagers.
Mhm.
How do we do this together? How do we do this effectively? How do we keep our marriage first in all of this? Because if we don't, there's a good chance they're going to rip it apart. Like, there's a good chance that's going to happen. And so it's not too late just because you didn't start this process um, when there actually was a baby carriage. It's never too late to start this,
Yeah.
whether you are newly married, or you are married with a small child, or you are married with teenagers, or you are, married and have grandkids now. It's never too late to get on the same page with all of that and talk about those things and discuss those things and be on the same page, so that you keep the main thing,
Mhm.
that you are able to keep your marriage strong, because it's just inevitable that if your marriage is strong, you have a much better chance of your family being strong,
Mhm.
and you have a much better chance of your extended family being strong. If the marriage is falling apart, it's going to affect all the rest of it.
Right.
Okay. It doesn't mean, if you're having marital problems, it doesn't mean that you can't still be a good dad or a good mom, but it's going to be harder. And it's because now you're doing that on your own. Or if you are, a single dad or single mom, that you can't be a good dad, or you can be a good dad, you can be a good mom. You can do all of that inside the situation that you are in right now, but it's going to be easier if you're doing that inside of a marriage that is working and that is functional and that is fun and fulfilling. It's going to make all of the rest of it much easier and much more natural and flow more smoothly
Mhm.
if you're doing that. So this isn't a, I didn't want it to feel like this is a, this is the only way to go about this. You have to be married and have a strong marriage to have a strong family. That's not necessarily the case, but more often than not, you will have a stronger family if you have a stronger marriage, right? You're more apt to have that strong family if you have a strong marriage in the beginning, or from this moment on,
Mhm.
right?
And it takes work. You have to continue to work at it all the time. Your marriage, your family, those kind of things. And not to give up on it or to quit. There's days you may feel like it, but you have to keep going.
Right.
And again, that goes back to communicating about it. What do you need from me? What do I need from you? It's asking those questions and being willing to be vulnerable and honest. And that's hard. It's always hard to do.
Hmm.
It shouldn't be with your spouse. It should be something you can do and feel safe doing. But it's not easy.
What are some takeaways, key takeaways that maybe we can give people beyond what we've said already just in our conversation? If we're going to say, hey, you've listened to this podcast, here's some things we want you to take and that you can put into practice now, and that you can look at for your
I
marriage.
think one of the big things is if you're I'm going to say worried, but thinking about am I doing this right? Is it working? Then you're doing the right things by consistently thinking about it and being focused on making sure it's the best it can be.
Hmm.
And so if those are things that you're looking at, if you're focused on it, then that's a huge part of you doing what you need to do to make it the best it can be. If you
Hmm.
don't ever think about it, it's never in your mind, then you may be missing out on what's really going on. So I
Mhm,
think it's a good thing if you are focused on it or worried about it or concerned about it,
mhm.
because you are thinking about it and you are putting that in a big way. You're putting that in the front of your mind because
Right.
it's important.
The fact that you are trying to find
Mhm.
information, that you are
Mhm.
looking for
Right.
answers, is a good sign that you are moving in the correct direction.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One thing I think that we could do to be sure that we are heading in the right direction is to experience moments
Mhm.
and not just manage them.
Mhm.
I think we have a tendency to have these moments that we manage instead of experience.
Mhm.
You just have to go on social media to see people doing that. You know, everything's got to be a perfect picture. All the presents have to be wrapped just so. Every face has to be clean in every picture, and unless the picture's cute with a peanut butter and jelly all over their face, then we'll smear it all over their face and take a picture of them. It's so much micromanaging of the situations that we don't really get to truly experience the situations. There are times that I wish I had more pictures of my childhood. On the other side of that, I'm kind of glad that my whole life isn't documented every second. You know, I'm glad that I have experiences that are only in my memory and only in my mind because I got to fully be there. If you want to have a strong family, those are built around authentic experiences, not manufactured ones. And so, you know, big birthday parties are great, but you don't have to have giant ones for it to be a great experience.
Yeah, take that pressure off yourself
Mhm,
and really be in those moments. And we've talked about that in previous podcasts about
mhm,
being in the moment and finding the magic in the moment. And I think it's really not only finding the magic, but being present in that moment and really enjoying that moment instead of worrying about what else is going on. I don't want to take that picture of the laundry's on the couch that I haven't folded. But like,
mhm,
who cares? Like, be in that moment. Take the picture if you want the picture, or just be in the moment and don't take the picture.
mhm.
It doesn't matter, but it's easy to get caught up in that. I know for women, or for me especially, and then several of my friends that we talk about, we feel like it has to look a certain way, and
Right,
to really take that pressure off yourself and
right.
really be in that moment.
Because what happens in those pressures is going back to the marriage. How many times do you remember as a kid your parents bickering back and forth about something during an experience, you know, or how
Hmm.
many times did we personally bicker back and forth about something during something that we should just be having fun and experiencing because we were trying to make it something
Hmm.
that it wasn't naturally being
Right.
instead of just having the experience. And
Hmm.
so then automatically you're causing trouble in the marriage. I mean, it wasn't anything that we were gonna get divorced over, but I mean, why were we not being one in those moments and experiencing them together in a good way instead of worrying about, you know, if it was a certain way or not?
Plus, what memory are you giving your child
Right. Right.
of what marriage should look like and what memories of their childhood? I think it's just important to know that you have to lean into each other and know what the other person needs and to communicate. To
Mhm.
really say, "Hey, I could tell you were stressed in that moment. I mean, maybe that moment's gone, but how do we do that differently next time? What do you need from me so you feel supported? What do I need from you so I feel supported, so we can be the best team and couple we can be, and then be the best parents we can be, so that we can show up and be in those moments instead of being worried about those other things and letting those stressors get the best of us,
Mhm.
and really be able to communicate that, and be vulnerable in that. Now, obviously, you're not probably going to have that, and probably shouldn't have that discussion right after you've tried to snap a picture at Christmas, but really giving yourself that time to have that communication too. Again, making yourself a priority, whether that's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, a coffee date on the back porch, whatever, so you can say, what do you need? Like, okay, we have now added this child to our family, and I see that you're struggling with things, or I don't see you're struggling with things, and that's amazing, but I am. And so, hey, let's talk about it. And how do I support you? How can I be your person in this, and really communicate about it? I think it's huge.
Yeah. Probably the main one that I would give that I probably feel is most important is consistency. That can only come after the communication stuff. You have to get on the same page for that to work. But then once you are on the same page, to be consistent with what you are doing.
Mhm.
So many times we just go back and forth on so many things. And, we don't want to sit through a temper tantrum, so we give in. Well, when you give in, then now all you've done is double that temper tantrum, because the next time you decide to stand up, they know if they keep going long enough that they're going to win.
Absolutely.
The reason that that's important from a marriage standpoint is if one person is consistent and the other person is not, then what that child is naturally going to do is to start pitting you against each other. Because honestly, a child does not think about your relationship. Your child probably does not want your marriage to end, but in that moment, children are selfish just as we are. We want what we want when we want it. And the way that we teach them not to be that way is by having rules and things of that nature. And so when we make up our mind on something, if both parents aren't consistent on that, then that child will use, or, I'm saying child, I mean this, and it really is from toddler, they learn that early, from toddler to teenage years, they will put you against each other. And then once they put you against each other, now it's not just affecting the child, now it's affecting the marriage. And so now you've let this inconsistency into your relationship. And so it's very important to have that communication so that you know the direction that you're heading. When you have something that you feel like is this is the hill we die on. We're not bending on this particular rule or this particular thing, whatever it is, then you're consistent with that. Because if you're consistent, then it just becomes a part of that child's life. They know. They know that this is the rule. They know that this is the way that this situation works out. And if you're consistent with that, yes, they're going to get mad. Yes, they're going to get upset once or twice, but they can't really keep getting mad about it because it's just the way it's always been. But I guarantee you, the one time you give in, the next time they are going to be mad. The next time they are going to be upset, and it's going to be a bigger deal. And then there is division that's caused.
Well, and they need that consistency. They may
Right.
not like it, they may fight against it, but kids want that consistency.
Mhm,
That allows them to feel safe.
mhm.
And I mean, I always tell parents, like, even if you're wrong consistently, but you're consistent,
Right.
then that's the key. And then
Mhm,
we can work on changing anything you need to change to make it better. But consistency really is the key. And then they want that, even if they throw a fit. This is horrible. I hate you. I hate this. They really want that consistency. They're saying all that, but they want you to still say the same thing you've always said and do the same thing you've always done and
yeah.
say, I'm sorry you feel that way, but we're still going to do fill in the blank.
Mhm,
And you just let them know your world is still safe and nothing is changing and we are still doing what we've always done. They may be mad, but that's what they want to know.
mhm.
And so you've been consistent and you've been the same. And that's right. I mean, if one parent is always going to go the other way, or no matter what, if one's going to say this and the other's going to say that, and it's going to flip-flop because the other one wants to be the nice guy or, the good guy in
Right.
this and get away with something, then they're going to do that. And it is going to cause conflict in the marriage at some point. It may not right now because, you know, Susie's 2 and she's adorable and she just batted her eyes. And so we're going to let her have this. But when she's 16, that's not going to be cool anymore. And so it's important for you guys to be consistent and to be on the same page. Absolutely. And that comes with the communication and being vulnerable with each other.
You're teaching your child how to manipulate when you do those things. And so you're teaching them in order to get what they want, they manipulate the situation, which is a bad thing, but you're teaching them that that's what they're going to do in their marriage. So not only are you setting them up for a rough life when when they're becoming a manipulator, and that's how they're getting their way, you're setting them up for a hard fought marriage and for a hard fought life, because you have taught them that that is the way to get what you want, is just to manipulate the situation. And so not only does it affect your marriage, it affects your child's future marriage. That gets back into the responsibility part of it, of like our responsibilities are so much greater than just being sure that this child lives, like that we're able to just,
Right.
do this. You are building a person,
Hmm.
and you are raising them up in the way that they should go. You need to be sure that that marriage between husband and wife is strong and open and communicating in all of that, so that you are able to be consistent
Right.
with your kids.
And your kids see a great example of what a marriage should be so that they have a good idea of what they want
Right.
and what they see as healthy when they're looking for a relationship in the
Right.
future.
And consistency doesn't necessarily mean stubbornness
Right.
or being unmovable, because you can be consistent and then situations change to where maybe that rule needs to change a little bit, or that, we need to move that.
But we need to move
We
that.
need to move that
Not
together.
not because, you talk to me, I think we're gonna move it, and then either I tell you later or you find out later that
Right.
I moved the standard.
Right.
It can really be, and I think the one thing that we didn't do, I wish we had done more, we were on the same page a lot of times, but, like, one of us would change the standard, and then we'd tell the other one later instead of saying to her, "Hey, we're gonna talk about it, and we'll let you know."
Mhm.
I think it's okay for them to hear, "Hey, dad and I are gonna talk about this, and then we're gonna let you know what we think."
Mhm.
Um, Tell them that and come back and then say, "Hey, we've talked about it, we've decided."
Mhm.
Um, that's huge.
I think the more of that communication you can let them in on,
Mhm.
the better. I mean, there are things that you need to talk about privately away from your kids, but there
Absolutely.
are also things that they need to see how you come to decisions, as
Mhm.
long as you're coming to decisions in a healthy manner.
Right.
I mean, like, if you're screaming and throwing things, they probably don't need to see that, because A, you need to get your crap together, but B, you need to come up with a way to communicate that you don't mind your kids seeing.
Right.
And then once you have that way to communicate that your kids can see, then you need to let them in on that, because you're training them up. You're teaching them how to have that type of a relationship. So, really, you need to be having the kind of relationship that you want your kids to have.
Mhm.
And if you're not, then put in the work to do that, to get that kind of relationship that you would want your children to have one day.
Right. They're they're babies. They don't know how to identify emotions yet. They don't know
Mhm,
how to communicate. They don't know how to make a relationship work. And so you're the example for those things. You're the
mhm,
one teaching them those things. So absolutely. What does a discussion, an argument, a resolution, an apology, those things look like? You're those examples for them. So within reason,
right.
when it's appropriate, those kind of things. Let your kids see you apologize. Let your kids see you be real and be human. Again, be smart at the same time. But we are a team and we are talking about these things. We are going to go make a decision if we can't talk about this in front of you because there's other things. But if we can talk it out,
Mhm,
then we're going to talk it out in front of you so you see how to communicate, see how we communicate and come
mhm.
to a decision. So you're learning those things.
Right. Kind of a bonus on top of that. It's very important that your kids see you apologize.
Hmm.
Almost all kids see their parents fight. Very few kids see their parents make up,
Hmm.
see the apology process. And there have been times in our marriage where I've had to apologize. I didn't start by letting our daughter see that, but there just came a point to where I decided that if I was going to fight publicly, then I was going to apologize publicly, because that needs to be seen. Too many times, kids see their parents fight, and then magically it's over in a day or two, and they don't really know how or why. And what that causes is, when they get in a relationship, then in their minds, you just fight, and then a few days later, it's over. And they don't really know how to make that be over. They don't see what goes on to make it be over. And so I think one takeaway is, if your kids see you fight, then they should see you apologize.
Hmm.
They should see you make it right. And it may be that one person needs to apologize, or it may be that both people need to apologize. Most of the time in a fight, both people have something to apologize for. And I think it's important that kids see that, and that they don't just see one parent apologizing all the time, that they see both parents apologizing, because it's teaching them how to have a great relationship. So, to sum it up, if you're going to raise a healthy family, you need to be in a healthy marriage, or at least working to make your marriage as healthy as it can possibly be. So, the key to a fun and fulfilling family is a fun and fulfilling marriage. And the way that you do that is to work work, day after day. Each and every day, you're working to make your marriage better, make it more fun, make it fulfilling, and make it an example that your family, your kids can see and that they can model their relationship after. I would hope that our daughter and son in law, in some ways, are modeling their marriage after what they saw in us. There are probably things that our daughter saw in us that I probably wouldn't want her to emulate, but there are a lot of things I think that she could and that it would be good because we are in a good spot now. We have built a fun and fulfilling marriage, but I mean it took a lot of work, a lot more work than what people tell you it takes.
Right. They don't tell you it takes work, but it
Yeah.
does. And it's always going to take work. The
Hmm.
day you stop working at it is the day that it becomes stagnant or you guys stop caring about it.
Hmm. There's our baby carriage,
He's John.
and she's Shalon, and this is Sitting in a Tree podcast.
Here we go.